Good morning. Welcome to Office Hours, the show where we answer your technical media production questions 7 days a week. Of course, you can ask any type of production question. We do also have some fantastic panelists here that know a lot about audio if you want to get those questions in. Bill, let's dive right in.
Our first one comes from Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. And Vic wonders, have you seen this video of a A1 front-of-house audio engineer giving a walkthrough at Red Rocks from identifying every mic to the front-of-house mixer? And he's got a link there to a YouTube video.
Jason.
I haven't, but I'm looking at it now. It's pretty cool. And there goes the half hour after broadcast.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael, and Douglas wonders, can you use a TRS-to-TRS tip ring sleeve cable to interconnect two unbalanced devices which only expect tip sleeve? And he's got a link to a Telefunken website.
Go ahead, Jason.
Sure, you can, and how it sounds will depend.
Mickey.
Yeah, in most situations, that's fine. Although with pieces of hardware that may utilize affordable or cheap components, such as the actual tip sleeve connector on them, the positions of the actual contacts inside the connector may vary, and that could lead to shorting out different pins or paths within the cable, which may give you different results. But in most situations, with decent quality connectors on the components that are in the system, the two devices, you'll be fine.
And Courtney.
Yeah, you should be fine if you're just using tip sleeve. Because most tip ring sleeves, the sleeve is the actual part of the connector that has the nut on it that screws into the panel, is connected to that, unless you get the ones that are electrically isolated that have plastic lockdowns on them. So you should be okay. Where you run into problems if you run tip ring sleeve, and you need to use tip ring sleeve into a tip ring sleeve. That's where you're going to run into problems. If you're using anything other than the tip and the sleeve to connect your unbalanced audio.
Next question.
Next one comes from Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington. If this is the best Keynote in the world, what do you think of the production? That's a brave thing. There's a YouTube link to it. I haven't seen it yet.
Neither have I. That's one of the challenges of getting questions in right before the start of the show with videos where sometimes we don't necessarily have the time to research it. So unless anybody else has seen it yet, I think we will. Oh, actually, maybe Ronnie has. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, so I just took a look while you were talking to the audience. It is really cool. If it's the best in the world, I don't know. We've done a lot of productions that are not. I'm just joking. This is a really high level event, and the way he interacts with the audience, both in the venue and the way he uses the displays around the venue is amazing. So I just encourage everyone to take a look at this. This could be the gold standard.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Rick Mitchell in Bowling Green, Kentucky. What is a good iOS app to scan your phone for spyware for outdated apps and duplicate photos?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I'll start with the duplicate photos, and a great app for that is Photos. Now, I don't actually recall what the current version on iOS is, but assuming you're syncing to the cloud, the Photos app on a desktop, annoyingly so, will show you duplicates and gives you a pretty good way of deciding whether to merge them and see which is which. I still don't love the way they kind of make you jump through a few hoops to see perhaps what folders or different albums they're in, but it'll show you just a list of duplicate photos. And if you use a little information there, you can see Perhaps sometimes you have an edited version, so it's smaller, so you can kind of whittle through that, merge it, or just delete them. So it's great for that. As for spyware, I mean, if there's something that is really egregious, this is the nice thing. This is the big debate about allowing consumers to have one choice, Apple, which exerts control on things like the App Store, because they also then have the ability to yank something that is egregious from the App Store and actually from the phone. So that's a nice thing when you have that choice. So there really isn't going to be something really super egregious that is pervasive and sits out there. Outdated apps, that I don't know if anyone else has a good tip for that.
And Jason?
Trying to get rid of spyware on an iPhone, it really comes down to not downloading bad apps. That's really kind of your way into and out of the problem. As far as a definitive scan, keep your phone up to date and recognize that a spyware scan is really a false sense of security because it's trying to disprove a negative, meaning no negative spyware scan can affirmatively tell you there's no spyware on your iPhone. So, just get rid of junk apps.
And Bill?
So I use a couple of tools depending on what I'm doing. Spyware, I haven't really thought about it in a long time, and I don't really have to go looking for it very often because of exactly what was articulated before. The App Store and the Mac ecosystem has less, not none, but less. Outdated apps, I've learned very simply to just do sorts. You can get into your app library and sort it by date, and you'll see sometimes, oh my God, I haven't tossed this thing away in forever, and I haven't touched it in 3 years, so it's time to get rid of it. Duplicate photos and things like that. I still have, I'm not sure it's the best software, but I'm still using a program called TidyUp that I've had forever, and it does a quick scan of the root level of the drive, and it'll tell you, you can sort through a whole bunch of criteria, and it will easily find how many copies of something with the same origin date, the same size of file, and the same name. So for just knocking out, and then it gives you a whole bunch of choices like, would you like to keep one? Do you want to get rid of, keep one here and one backup or something like that? And you can just hit run, go have a cup of coffee, and when it comes back, that usually takes care of duplicate photos and things like that. Duplicate files of all types, actually.
Mickey?
Yeah, what I would suggest is on a mobile device like a phone or a tablet, every time you get a new one, do not restore from a previous phone. Just start from scratch, install the applications that you need. Don't install something if just because you had it before. When you need it, install it. Then you'll end up with a much cleaner device. I recommend the same with computers. Reformat every couple of months. Start from scratch with a fresh machine. You'll be a lot happier with how it performs in the long term.
And Jeff?
Real quick devil's advocate here, and that is there is a situation, and I've had it a number of times, where an old app eventually gets pulled by the developer from the App Store. Now, if you leave it on your phone, put it in a folder or whatever, you have it, and it'll work as long as it still works in the current iOS that you have. But you cannot, for instance, start over and then go get it. Even if you've bought it, purchased it, whatever, if it's not available in the store, you can't get it. And then same thing actually happens when, if you have a device, for example, that's older and the app no longer supports perhaps the iOS that you have on a device that can't upgrade further, you can still have that app. In fact, sometimes you can even download it. The developers sometimes will keep slightly older versions available so that a version of iOS that can't download the newest one can automatically determine and correctly download a previous version if it's available for that iOS. But that's, again, assuming that you keep some apps. So I have some apps that every now and then I want for a specific task, and I can use it, but they are no longer available to get if I delete them.
Yeah, and I'm also not aware that spyware can even exist on an iOS device, considering how locked down the operating system is on these devices. Apple's in extreme vetting processes, and also even a number of years ago. Now, the one way that you could possibly have this is with data collection when it comes to advertisements. If you're using apps that are displaying ads, but also a number of years ago in iOS, Apple added a feature now, so you get a prompt that says, tell the app to not allowed to track me as well. So putting more control in the power of the user that is using that app. Go ahead, Bill.
I just wanted to note, Apple often has a list of apps. They deprecate apps and say, we're no longer supporting this. I always consider that kind of a ticking time bomb, because those are the ones who usually, I'm still using old apps and it's still fine and it's working. And it obviously doesn't make any calls to any subsystem or fundamental core process that's going to screw things up. And then suddenly it will. And you're going, this thing that I've been using consistently, now if I try to launch it, the computer freezes or something. So I always consider them kind of a ticking time bomb. I'm guilty of it too. I've got a couple of programs around that I just happen to like and I've used for decades and they seem to work fine. But I always know that if anything goes wrong with it, it's my own darn fault. So
let's go to the next question.
Next one comes to us from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. How do you rate Hollywood's new Vcore system, which turns smartphones into professional wireless monitors, 4K video at 30 frames per second with ultra-low 65 millisecond latency proxy recording with their app? And it's from Hollyland. So he's got a link there to it.
Mickey, start us off.
Yeah, with something like this, I think with the investment that one would put into using an iPhone as a monitor, I think one might be better off getting like a small HD or even like a B stock unit from small HD, or even an Atomos recorder. On a phone is a consumer device, and at least at the moment, there's no way to calibrate the display on an iPhone. So you'd be giving up the ability to have accurate monitoring, and that's the whole point. That's one of the reasons you would get a monitor, is to have to be able to reproduce accurately the image so that you can make creative decisions on set. So that's thrown out the door without the ability to calibrate it, which on displays little monitors, production monitors from Small HD or Atomos and the like, there's an ability to calibrate them. You hook up a sensor to your computer as well as the display to your computer, and you can calibrate them really quickly. Another thing is that even on their marketing material, they show images of the device, of the phone, with part of the frame covered up by the notch of the iPhone. It's like, why would you want that? I don't see. I could see it being useful in a pinch where you, for some reason, don't have a production monitor and you need something to use in an emergency. But I would not consider this as the solution that you would utilize in a production. And
Corney.
Well, I certainly haven't tried this because, I don't have any iOS. Well, I do have an iPad or two. I don't have any iPhones. It looks a little bit like it's self-designed, and it's hard to wrap your head around because this thing does multiple things. It's a transmitter, and it's a recorder. It records locally on an SD card in compressed format, long GOP format. So you plug a HDMI input. I think down here somewhere is a diagram. That's not the one I was looking for. It plugs, your camera plugs into it over HDMI, and then it transmits. Oh, it has green screen preview. It transmits the image over Wi-Fi to up to 4 iOS devices. So I would not use this, like Mickey said, as a calibration monitor by any means at a DIT station or for a DP to make his judgments on color balance or anything like that. They're also promoting the fact that you can use iOS, an iPhone plugged into it, to record ProRes files, because the iPhone with the app, any of like the Blackmagic app can record ProRes files. So there's that going on for it. It records internally. I think it records at 1080p, 60, or 4K 30. But that's on the internal SD card, and it transmits, and it'll only connect to 4 different portable devices, transmitting over Wi-Fi, I think. So it's an interesting solution for a low-budget situation where you don't have a DIT, or the DP doesn't want to judge the quality of his camera on any of the monitors, but they just want to see it for framing, for performance, for what's in the shot, lighting, etc., to take cues off of audio. Those particular uses of remote monitoring on the set are great for this kind of stuff. Low latency, 65 milliseconds, is a little bit on the high. It's about a frame and a half. Camera operators, I don't know how well they could use it, because they're going to be, if you're going to zoom and you're going to stop on a zoom, you'll be a little bit off, or doing the pan or following someone with the camera might get a little bit dicey if you're using one of these monitors to actually aim the camera with. Once at something moving might be a little dicey, but 65 is pretty low latency for something that's going to compress to H.265 and transmit.
Bill.
I consider this, bear with me in this weird analogy, a little bit like Costco. I always think of Costco as if there was a bar graph for quality and a bar graph for price. Costco, to me, their brand promise is they're going to be 70% of the quality. You can't get to the very top, but they usually have pretty darn good stuff. On price, they try to be 40 to 50% of what you would pay elsewhere for the same class of merchandise. Now, millions of people think that's a really good value proposition and shop at Costco, but they are not trying to be a high-end product retailer. In the professional realm, if you want to work in that top tier, up at the top, where 1 in 100 people call themselves true professionals in something as complicated as making videos and things like that, this is probably not going to be the tool set for you, because you really want to push up to be exceptional. And there is always going to be a room for people who are exceptional at things like this. But most of the market doesn't live up there in the exceptional zone. They want the Costco kind of idea. I want it to be good enough, and I want it to be affordable enough so that I can go out and do my work and not worry about it. That's kind of how I feel about tools like this. It's not going to be as good as a camera and anything like phones and things like that. There are compromises you have to make. I can shoot rings around my phone with a real camera because I have all the control that I would possibly want, and I know how to use it. But I still shoot a lot with my phone because it serves my purposes when it does. I'm working on a big project right now, and I took all the photos on my phone, and it's a lot of dark things against white backgrounds. I need to have that look, and I'm pushing the exposure a lot to get detail in the black items, and it's working fine. So I didn't have to shoot it on a Nikon or a Hasselblad or any of the old cameras I used to use. It's doing a great job, but I am not sending this to a national magazine, so I'm playing where the job wants me to play. And I think those kind of tools that Paul is talking about in this question are kind of like that. If you just want to get the job done, it'll be fine.
Jason.
Yeah, I got to reinforce what Bill said. I do not have many pet peeves, especially around office hours, but one of them is I would like Cristal, the best Cristal, the best Cristal, and I would like it in the cheapest possible way. And it's like, at some point, I can't help but be insulted. It's like you want the best and you don't want to pay for it. Okay, cool. That is the definition of not professional. The other side of it is that I love the way that technology is constantly undermining, the fact that most of us have switchers and none of them are Grass Valley. That is a good thing. So, I am of two minds about this.
Mickey.
Yeah, I just wanted to show that for $650 you can get an Atomos Ninja 5.2-inch UHD recorder. That's a lot cheaper than an iPhone and more accurate than an iPhone. and it's designed for production work, unlike an iPhone. So I don't see a point with going with this apart from, again, having something that you can use in a pinch.
And Courtney.
Yeah, I found the diagram I was looking for. The thing that this offers is its versatility. You can use it in this situation where your camera's plugged via HDMI into the device here, the Vcore transmitter. That can transmit to up to 4 iOS devices, which have their special receiver app running on it. You can then it has an output here that's USB-C or Lightning to a mobile phone, which is direct over cable, so that this mobile phone down here can be used for recording in ProRes using like the Blackmagic app, or maybe they have an app. And you can also configure it to run with, have it receive on 2 apps and 1 Pyro receiver. So you can hook those receiver up to a professional HDMI monitor, etc., or 1 transmitter, 2 high-end receivers for point-to-point reception, and plugging into larger monitors, let's say like a 55-inch monitor on the set for clients to look at, etc. So you can use it in all 3 of these different configurations, and it does provide wireless connectivity to monitors other than just handheld devices like iPads or iPhones. So it is interesting in that respect of its versatility. Plus, it records proxies internally in the transmitter itself, kind of like the Ninja does, without giving you a monitor.
And Bill.
I just wanted to note that basic functionality is also built into Final Cut for iPad, which has a system that's similar. It doesn't do as much. So obviously, some companies are thinking that a lot of people are going to want to use iOS devices in this multicam environment, including Apple. And so they're pushing the boundaries of it. And it's interesting that there are limitations probably about processor speed and what they can expect to see. And so just if you want to go this direction, you probably need one of the newest iPads that's fast and the newest iPhones that are also fast to allow this real-time stuff to work. Just a note.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Kent Kuhalski in Madison, Ohio. Are there any alternative devices for a pan-tilt zoom camera for just a normal camcorder to track a speaker?
Ronnie?
Yeah, so there are different ways of doing that. B&H has a few of the PD set camera cradles, and that can be remote controlled for this type of usage. What I've been doing, because I had the product already for other stuff, is the Ronin. So the DJI Ronin, or they're just called RS, which is the gimbal or the gyro stabilizer heads they have, and put that on a tripod or a table stand, and then you can have pretty heavy cameras on top of that. In addition to that, you can add some other things to this. Middle Things has an interface that makes this easily controllable from a professional PD set controller. So there are ways of building this. So if you have a gimbal like this, you can probably take a look at that. They also have the cheaper series from the Mini series, or the RS4 Mini, that is a little bit cheaper. I haven't seen those tested with the Middle Things interfaces to be able to use professional PD set controllers, but still you can use the DJI lineup of apps, etc., to remote control the gimbal. And as I think we have the RS2, it's a little long in the tooth nowadays, but that can also be controlled just using a cable. So we have been using that in front of a jib, for instance, just hanging it from the top of the jib, and then remote control the camera movement from an extra handle that is just a cable in between those. I think it's 25 feet or something. So that is also a neat way to do it. And of course, DJI products in this category are kind of aggressively priced, so they are, I wouldn't say it's cheap, but it's affordable.
Jeff.
So depending on your field of view, now if you have a speaker who is pacing up and down an arena, this may not work. But a budget-friendly alternative that is getting better and better, and that is software tracking. So Zoom, for example, just recently added auto framing. It's just a switch. You can flip it on. So if you have a good enough camera with enough resolution and a somewhat limited field of view where your speaker may be just moving around a little bit, just like Apple, we have center stage. These are getting better and better. They're still not perfect. They're not smooth. They're not what a good camera operator would do, but they're pretty doggone good. And just like AI and everything else, I mean, they're gonna get better exponentially.
And Mickey.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what is meant by normal camcorder. But yeah, you certainly can use systems from, say, from DJI or gimbals from DJI or Movi, which is a big step up in usability and quality in the movement over DJI products. But if you go with DJI products, they have a whole bunch of gimbals at different sizes. They have the little handheld ones and the Ronin 2. And as Ronnie mentioned, you can pair it with an interface with by middle things, along with this another interface that they have, along with one of their either hardware controllers or software control system, which allows you to hook it up with the with an Xbox controller or a video game joystick. It's a bit more affordable option compared to a proper like PTZ joystick from Middle Things. On the higher end of things, there's GSS gyro stabilized systems. They're a popular choice in larger productions for hot heads, remote heads. They specialize in live more than film and or recorded material narrative productions. They're really popular in the live world, especially with sports. You see them mounted on vehicles and on choppers and or even as static remote heads. Other brands and the higher end to look at would be companies like Service Vision, which is a Spanish company, as well as Ari also has hot heads, remote heads that you can utilize for production. So those are various options at different price ranges.
And Jeff?
Real quick, I'll just throw out there, Mickey, you made me think of this, and if anyone has any thoughts, but, we're seeing more and more little drones because of how good their tracking and stabilization and everything else is for doing automated camera work, and they're getting pretty impressive. Now, you can't bring them in, they're going to be loud potentially where you are, but really impressive what you can do with them.
Next question.
Next one comes, excuse me, good heavens, from Caleb Groom in Pinehurst, North Carolina. The wire length on my in-ear monitors is too short. What's the best way to extend them without losing quality or introducing problems?
Ronnie.
That is one dangerous way to ask a question in this panel. The best. That words makes our mind blow up, and we go for the best at once. One of the best ways to do that is to buy the insanely expensive Sennheiser IEM wireless digital VDSM kit, which will cost you tens of thousands of dollars. The plus is that you get, I think it's 32 channels of IEM, so you can have that go around all around your head. But frankly, I would, in this case, probably just buy an extender cable. At home, in my home studio, I have a much cheaper wireless IEM, which is called the XSW IEM from Sennheiser, which is, it's kind of analog, but it's really not that bad audio quality, and it makes me able to move around without cable. So that is kind of the middle way. But the easiest one is just get an extension cable.
Jeff?
Yeah, almost only because I like saying angry audio, I'll give a quick little mention of this little deal, which is the magnetic connector. Comes in both 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch. So while you're at it, I mean, depending on how much extension you need, you can throw this in there. And this is great. It's like a MagSafe connector. So whether intentionally or unintentionally, you start to walk away from where it's plugged into, but it's great for just kind of breaking away and quickly getting up without fiddling with the in-ears. And, you know, you can get pretty fancy. So you can, you know, mount a plate in the desk, and they have this super high-end, fantastic 6-foot extension. And I'm kidding, it's just a regular extension cable. But you can get pretty fancy with it, or just do the simple connector.
Jason.
Only in office hours is this a question, which is any TRS cable that works will work. Will everyone just kind of pile in? Okay, so cables, lots of ways to do cables, and when you get tired of cables, the very best is a body pack, unless you're in a very hostile place.
Courtney.
Yeah, I have mine also is a little too short. I go for the a TRS cable. One thing to be careful of, this particular one, TAN QY, they're like $7 for a 10-footer. You didn't say how short it was, you know, but you can get these in a variety of lengths. Of course, I would get it in a length that is just long enough to bridge the gap between your mixer and your headphones. And these cables are designed for earphones. They are not shielded, so don't use this to extend a microphone, because they're not shielded cables, probably. And the other thing you might think about in just getting these normal extensions, these happen to be gold-plated. Sometimes that can create issues, because if your in-ear headphones have nickel plating on their plug, and this has gold plating on the female side and the male side, sometimes the difference between those two metals can generate corrosion between the two because of an electrical ion difference between the metals. So you may have to spit on it every now and then to reach the connection, so it may become a little scratchy after a while between those two metals, so you may have to clean them and burnish them, because they can cause corrosion between dissimilar metals. So make sure if these are gold-plated, have a gold-plated plug on your headphones so that it doesn't create this issue of difference in metals creating a corrosion.
Bill.
So I am a little particular about things, particularly the cables I use every day. And I stumbled across this one. This is what I use for my IEMs, and it's from a company called SyncWire. I looked up their website. They actually have a bunch of stuff. But this has been one of the nicest cables I've got, because it's the flexible cable. You know, you can sometimes get those stiffer cables that are not as well constructed, and they seem to be problematic. So I think I'm going to go back to these people when I need more. They've got all sorts of other products. They have a whole website here, and all sorts of things. But I've been impressed with the quality of this cable, so I'm going to stick with them.
Mickey.
Yeah, if your in-ears utilize any of the standard in-ear connectors, there's a 2-pin standard. There's a standard that's called MMCX, which is a coaxial connector, and then there's another one called QDC, which is also another type of coaxial connector. If your in-ears use any of those standards, you can hop on over to like somewhere like Amazon and buy a third-party cable, because they're standards. They're widely available from many fun named brands. This one that I utilize is from a brand called K-Bear. So yeah, just random, generic brands you find on Amazon. And this is a nice 2.5 meter cable that I use when I'm mixing on a console, so I can just keep it on. I can plug into the console when I need to walk away, just pull it out. It's nice and long, so I can even take 2 or 3 steps away from the console if I need to look at something. But yeah, if your in-ears use a standard connector, there are a lot of third-party cables available.
Let's go to the next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Up next, are gimbal stabilizers with iPhones better than just using a cage, or can you have both at the same time?
Jason.
Well, you kind of need one in order to use the other, and I guess to explain that, I'll show you. So this is not a perfect form-fitting cage because I got tired of buying them, but cage usually is to attach your phone to something because it's got quarter 20s all around it, or to attach things to your phone. A gimbal is designed to stabilize stuff, and you are probably thinking to yourself, you can't stabilize what you can't attach to a stabilizer. Well, that's correct. So in order to use a stabilizer, you either have a little clip that attaches the phone, or you're or you're basically just relying on, we'll call it analog stabilization, which just means if you have a larger, better grip on a small thing, then it's probably a little bit more stable. But it's active noise versus passive noise cancellation.
Ronnie.
Jason just mentioned my things, but I will add, using a gimbal on a phone without a cage is probably the way the gimbal vendor or producer has meant it to be used. So the calibration is matched with the weight of the phone that this gimbal is meant to be used for. And adding a lot of extra weight to that gimbal will probably make it difficult, if not impossible, to have a really, really good calibration. So that goes also for the power on the motors, the stepping motors that are actually doing this active stabilization. So I would try to avoid adding a lot of weight to a phone gimbal systems like the DJI Osmo series, for instance. I have the previous model of the Osmo that we used for running around IBC show floor a few weeks back, and the gimbal is helping you to stabilize and get good stable shots even if you are on the move, or as said earlier today, to stabilize or be able to remote control the movement for the PT set, at least PT, so pan tilt, not always the set, is included in that remote control, and use that on a tripod or on a table stand. So there are ways to use a stabilization gimbal, and I wouldn't mix that up with any form of cage. That is another type of product.
And Courtney.
Yeah, I think Ronnie hit it on the head there. A gimbal is used to stabilize the phone, but you don't necessarily want anything surrounding that phone other than the phone itself. And the Osmo, which he mentioned here, is the latest one, the OM5 in Athens gray. These are only like $129. And this is if you're recording on the phone itself. You really don't, and you're using the phone as a monitor. So you don't really need to plug anything into that phone. So why would you put it in a cage? Because the stabilization is coming from the gimbal, so you really don't need a cage to hang on to the microphone. As Jason demonstrated, the cages are used if you want to hand hold it without stabilization and you want to plug other things into it, like you're going to feed a transmitter, or you're going to feed another monitor somewhere. You need to plug things into that phone, like an external recorder, to capture for long periods of recording on the phone itself. You may want to plug a hard drive into it, etc. So the frames, cages are great for that. If you want to attach a light to the top of it to illuminate your subject, that's where the cages come in handy. But you give up the ability to mount a gimbal on it because to stabilize it. In that case, you may want to use the phone's internal digital stabilization to stabilize your image, because when you're walking holding that phone in a cage, you're going to get the motion of you walking, and it's not going to smooth out your camera work very much.
Next question.
Zach Stoldsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I'm building out a production rack and want a Mac Mini M4 that'll be used for recordings, Zoom hybrid events, and live streaming. What should I include, software or hardware-wise? I already have the monitors and an X32 in the rack.
Jason, start us off.
Oh boy, there is so much here that I will I will show something cool that I saw at Stanford, and then I will defer to the remainder of the panel. This is the most ridiculous video wall I've ever seen. It's brand new. They're just now putting it in. This is 4K, and the entire panel is 4K HDR, and it is so wide that you cannot anywhere in this room see all of it. Basically, it's IMAX, but it's but it's an extremely small room. This is the rack that drives it, and as you can see, there's more than one Mac Mini. So I'll yield the rest of my time.
And let's go to Jeff.
So, big thing often overlooked, and that is battery backup, uninterruptible power supply. Of course, two things. It prevents your stuff from just shutting off if you have a problem with power, but also conditions the power. So once you spec everything out, most of the providers have good calculators for you to determine how much capacity and excess capacity you should have in that battery backup once you know all the other gear you're going to have.
And Mickey.
Yeah, I think you might be thinking of this, perhaps not you might be thinking of this not the best approach. You might want to flip your thinking the other way around and think of, okay, what do I need to provide? Okay, I need a graphics engine of some sort, or I need a character generator of some sort. Then you think of, okay, how do I implement a character generator? Which character generator might be the best? And figure things out from there instead of thinking, okay, I have this piece of hardware, I have this computer, I have this machine. What can I put in it? Think of what you need to solve first, then figure out what solutions fit as the solution for that problem.
Next question.
Jason Bache in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and here on the panel is teasing us. He says, for those waiting for it, I'm about to spend some of your money.
Jason, what do you got for us?
So yeah, I saw this come up late at night, and I ordered it immediately. For those who are interested, the Blackmagic Camera Dock is now available for sale at the Apple Store. Mine arrives tomorrow, and I'm not even sure I'm going to keep it, but you bet I'm going to buy it and play around with it for 2 weeks.
Awesome. Please do and report back. Next question.
Ryan in Reno, Nevada says constant bit rate versus variable bit rate. What's your preference when live streaming an event? Our software defaults to variable bit rate. When streaming to YouTube, we often register warnings for a bit rate being too high or too low, looking to move to a constant bit rate.
Go ahead, Bill.
I do both, and this is a horses for courses kind of thing. The magic of variable bit rate is it allows bits to be focused on complex scene that requires a lot of compression, but you want to have look good. The classic example is you're shooting a tree or something like that where the leaves are moving around. There is nothing much to compress there. There's no stretches of something like a person against a colored background where it can just say everything is blue up to the point you get to the head of the person talking. So variable bit rate when it's required and constant bit rate when you're having trouble getting a signal to something else. But I don't think we're ever going to have a circumstance where they're both not necessary. And sometimes you just have to do what the content distribution network wants you to do.
And Mickey.
Yeah, there's no real a preference shouldn't be taken into account here because there are hard requirements for various CDNs. I guess the CDN you mentioned here is YouTube, and YouTube hasn't been like perfect in terms of relaying the requirements for their ingest for live broadcast or live streaming to their platform. But if you take a look at their documentation, which they do have, and you scroll down just a little bit, bitrate encoding, constant bit rate. So that's a pretty clear cut there in terms of what they require for ingest.
Next question.
Dan Maliska, in Nelson, British Columbia, we have training videos behind a paywall. Some people on the phones are having no audio from my Vimeo CDN, Content Distribution Network. Most people have no issues. What's the best export settings in Final Cut Pro to solve this problem?
Mickey.
Yeah, what I would recommend is to first test for yourself and try to replicate the experience that people viewing things on your mobile device are experiencing, because it just may be a user error, and perhaps they're not unmuting the player when they hit play. I believe you're using Vimeo. I believe there's a way to force unmute on their player, so you might want to include that in your embed code for your paywall page where the player is. But first test out and see if you can replicate the experience first.
Bill.
Yeah, on upload to Vimeo, they're going to transcode your stuff into their encoding system. So whatever you're starting with, it's not an encoding problem. If they're getting it on Vimeo, it's in their system. So they're doing that. I would look more at audio targeting and things like that. I've seen examples of people uploading something and their audio targeting is something that the system they're going to play it back on through this CDN just isn't reading that track correctly. So I make everything as simple as possible. I still produce almost everything in mono, mirrored exactly on 2 stereo tracks for my distributions. You want to make sure they're utterly in phase, because we've had circumstances where things were out of phase. And when they got collapsed to mono on somebody's device, the audio track just went away, because that's a traditional out-of-phase phase cancellation problem. So just be careful about how you master the original, but then sending it up to Vimeo, they're going to transcode it into their system, so you shouldn't have to worry too much about that stuff, about quality of that.
If you like Office Hours and the show that you're currently watching, there are numerous ways you can contribute to this community. One of the things you can do, you can subscribe to the show on YouTube to make sure that you get notified every time we broadcast the show. You can share it with a friend, and you can also become part of the community. The show is entirely driven by volunteers. There are various roles that are available. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, you can go to officehours.global/join. That's officehours.global/join. And while you're there, if you'd like to also support the show monetarily, you can also donate by going to officehours.global/donate. Let's go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael is up next, and Douglas wonders, has anyone had experience with a portable external SSD attached to their iPhone for recording? He's particularly interested in 4K ProRes 422.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yes, I've done this. In fact, I did this on a second hour. I'm sure it's still up somewhere in YouTube, using an OWC jump drive, using a tiny, tiny little jump drive. And over the course of the second hour, I filled the entire thing from one of these Blackmagic 4K cameras shooting 60 frames per second RAW. And yes, if it can do that, this is the New York. If you can do that, then you can record anywhere. And to that end, I've yet to be disappointed by an OWC drive, and that is long before I had anything to do with them professionally.
That was a USB-C?
USB-C, and then it clicks out to also do USB-A. So you actually have both in the jump drive.
Very cool. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. For miking a panel discussion, what are the trade-offs between individual lavs versus boom mics or parabolic mics like the Klover MiK? In what specific scenarios does one approach definitively outperform the other?
Jeff.
Well, I'll tell you from the editing standpoint, post-production, there's nothing more frustrating than getting one file with everyone's voice on it versus isolated tracks for each person in the panel. For an unscripted discussion, panel discussion, where everything is going to happen, people are going to step on each other, people are going to talk over one another, someone's going to bang into the mic and someone's going to pour coffee on something else and someone's going to cough and all of those things. It is a million times easier to deal with when you have individual tracks for each mic, for each speaker, versus all of them clumped together.
Jason.
I'm going to be a drummer for a moment and use what might be a not perfect analogy. What you're basically saying with respect to mics is there a definitive time when you use a crash cymbal versus a ride cymbal versus a China cymbal? The answer is no, like straight up no.
Courtney.
Well, there's a lot of questions I have about this panel discussion. Are you doing transmission or streaming? Is it live? Or are you going to edit it? Is it going over a PA for live people in the room so that they're going to be open speakers? Then you're going to try and get, in that case, you want to get the microphone as close to each of the individual speakers that are speaking on the panel as possible, either an SM58 held right up next to their mouth. A lavalier even is a little too far away if you're going to have open speakers, because if you open all of those lavaliers at the same time and the sound is coming out of the speakers, you have to deal with feedback, and that's going to be a problem. The other problem is, even if you're just recording it and you don't have open speakers, you may want to, if you have shotgun microphones, let's say, that are out of frame, you're going to hear more of the room on each individual person, and you don't want to fade up let's say 3 or 4 people on a panel discussion. You don't want to fade up all those mics at the same time because you don't know who's going to speak when. So you need to have an auto mixer in that case to keep the other mics attenuated when one person is speaking. That way you're not hearing that person over the other microphones that are boom microphones. And in all cases, you want to get the microphones as close to the people as you can. That will eliminate the sound of the room and the sound of the other people coming into that microphone, creating echoes or a hollow, roomy sound. So those are your basic caveats for miking a panel discussion. I would use an auto mixer if you can, because it can jump on those things where one person interrupts another. And there are modes where you can set them so that the panel leader, let's say the moderator's mic, supersedes anybody else. So the moderator, when he speaks, can cut off or attenuate the mics of whoever's speaking if he wants to interrupt them with a question or something. That can happen. Even a good front of house mixer is going to have difficulty with an open discussion and panel discussion, staying ahead of who's going to speak when, without clipping some of the things that they're saying before you get to their pot.
Mickey.
Yeah, Courtney covered it really well. Like, is this live? Is this broadcast? Is this recorded? How many panelists are there? Is there space for booms and boom ops? For me, the hierarchy would be, in terms of which mics to pick, would be a nice hypercardioid or supercardioid on a boom. But if it's live, or depending on the space, if there's an audience, you don't want 6 boom ops swing poles around on stage. But if it's something that's recorded, that may be an option, and that a nice, like, say, Sheps or MKH50 that's nice, close to just riding the frame line, 30 centimeters above each person's head, will sound fantastic. But there are, again, many situations where that may not be an option. If that's not an option, then I would go with a lavalier microphone or a headset microphone, again, depending on the situation. Parabolic microphones generally do not have a frequency response that is not sufficient for good capture of a human voice. So that would certainly be something that I would not plan for.
Next question.
Marty Peseda don't list a location. Shooting music with almost no rehearsal time. I find recording multiview and carefully watching it later is a great help. I want to use files created by an EVS and playback on HD shuttle with a knob. I can transcode using DaVinci, but not Proxy Creator.
Jason.
Okay, you really have to read between the lines here to get at the question here. I'm going to make up what I think is the question, which is, how do I use the how do I use the Shuttle HD to do playback from files that are created by EVS? And the answer is there's exactly one gotcha when it comes to Blackmagic recording, just straight up hardware recording. It does not like the things that other things create unless they are ProRes. Like just straight away, it just doesn't like it. Yes, you can, if you really want to, really mess with it and possibly get it to work. But you are going to be watching paint dry 5 times over and then it might work. So you just, be careful.
And Mickey.
Yeah, just to add to what Jason mentioned, you would want to encode the file for playback at an exact format that is supported for recording by that hyperdeck. And if you are using some sort of software to do a transcode between codecs or formats, then you would want to ensure that all the files in that specific piece of media match that format exactly, and they're encoded using the same piece of software, and they're encoded exactly at the same frame rate, codec, resolution, everything identical. It has to match exactly. In terms of transcoding software, I personally use Adobe Media Encoder as well as Shutter Encoder for preparing media for playback, even on Hyperdecks, and they work perfectly.
Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. What is needed to connect an in-person worship to also control remotely?
All right, right back to Mickey.
Yeah, so I'm assuming, Tony, you're asking about having a remote crew to be able to control different aspects of a production for a house of worship. First off, you would need to start off with equipment or hardware that can be controlled remotely through some sort of protocol. There might be a need to, depending on the hardware, there might be a need to convert between protocols or translate between protocols to be able to make it accessible remotely. But that's step number one. Make sure that the hardware has some sort of mechanism or capability to be remotely controlled through some way. On top of that, then you would need a way for your remote crew to be able to send commands remotely over the internet. And, these could be through, say, tunnels, VPN tunnels, or even tunnels that are from services like Cloudflare or Tailscale. You can utilize those so that your remote crew can get into the network and control those remotely controllable components remotely. And then on top of that, there's a layer of, if you want to make things simple for your remote crew, you can add a layer of abstractions that, say, if a volunteer from your house of worship may want to dial in remotely and control things remotely, you can make it a little simpler for them to get in, and that's where tools, say, from the likes of Central Control or even Universe Control, which is what the crew of Office Hours uses to control the Atem and the rest of the infrastructure, could be added in, so that it simplifies the whole process of onboarding and getting control to people outside of your physical environment.
Next question.
Next one comes from Musty Mo in Germany. What is the best way to get Dante into my workflow? I have an Atem Mini Extreme ISO SDI and HDMI and multiple Hyperdecks as a mixer. I have a MixPre 3.2 and a Tascam Model 12. I'm open for a complete affordable Dante Mixer. Where should I start?
Jason.
I'll lay the groundwork and leave the rest to Mickey. Well, Hermo, Dante is simply a way to route and transport audio. So it depends on how you need it in your workflow. You can go with, if you just need it to be the last thing in the chain, for example, you can put it out into your mixer in any which way. These are the Audinate IOs for output, and the inputs are exactly the same, except the arrows go in the other direction. If you need a mixer, I'll leave that to Mickey.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think I apologize, musty. Apologize for pronunciation. I think first things first. I think it's important to think of what problems are you trying to solve. Like, I wouldn't just like, oh, I want Dante, but why? Like, think first of what are you trying to solve that may be solved the best way possible by introducing an AV over IP protocol into your system, because it definitely might not be the right solution for what you're doing. I see you mentioned a Mix-Pre 3. Mix-Pre 3 doesn't really have balanced output, so that might hinder a Dante solution being integrated into that environment. Once you've figured out what problems you're trying to solve, then I would take the Dante certification courses. They just released a new version of the certification courses, version 3, and I would take those courses before even investing any into any Dante enabled piece of hardware, because you need to take the entire infrastructure into account. When you're dealing with AV over IP, it's not just, oh, I'm going to buy a Dante mixer, I'm going to buy an Avio. No, you're buying switches that are good to use for an AV over IP environment, that respect PTP, that handle PTP correctly. So it's not just, you need to learn what is necessary to have to implement Dante in your environment. Once you're done with that and you're still convinced that Dante is indeed the right way to go, then I would start off with purchasing 2 Avio adapters, as Jason mentioned earlier, and perhaps the license of Dante virtual sound card, along with a switch that is capable of handling Dante properly. Then you can start experimenting and putting practical knowledge or practical experience into the knowledge you gained during the certification courses.
And Corne.
Yeah, because a lot of the stuff you mentioned there doesn't really accommodate Dante directly, such as the Mini Extreme doesn't take Dante, the Hyperdecks don't take Dante, your Tascam Model 12 is an analog. It's a digital mixer with analog inputs. It doesn't have a Dante card where you can put in it. You can add the AVIO like Jason was showing. That'll give you 2 channels. But if you want to have all the channels, let's say, available coming in over Dante to your mixer, you may have to step up your mixer to something like a Behringer that can accept a Dante card. That's not going to be relatively cheap, but it will give you multiple inputs. And then you can then encode those, let's say, 16 channels of audio in a Behringer mixer with a Dante card into an SDI input that can go into your Mini Extreme. And that way you can get those 16 channels into your Hyperdecks over SDI. So that may be a way. You want to get it into the 16 channels, the SDI, from your Dante card. And to do that, you may need a multi-channel mixer that has a Dante card where all of the input channels can exist on single Dante channels.
Well, that wraps it for today's show. Thank you to all of the producers for putting in these wonderful questions. We had a lot of questions today, and we didn't get a chance to answer all of them, but there's always another show tomorrow, so we're going to push those questions back to you, and you can always repost those questions in another day. If the question came in from a QR code, you don't have to do anything at all. We will automatically put it back into the show for you as well. Thank you to all the panelists for bringing your A game today and answering all these questions. We had a really great panel. And of course, to the back-end crew of volunteers that wakes up every day. It takes a small village to put this show on 7 days a week, and we really appreciate all the work that you do. If we were to have traveled around the world to answer all of these questions according to the teleologic traversal, that would have been 25,000 miles. That's 40,000 kilometers and 194 million bananas for scale. All right, let's jump into After Hours. See ya.
Okay. We can say a little prayer over.
Good job, everyone.
Ronnie's, I know, his MacBook, his Mac Studio.
Ah, yes. Poor Ronnie.
Ah, the i9. Its time had come.
Yes.
And then come, and then come, and then come.
Stands for 9 lives, yes. And
That's right.
Outlived its 9th life.
9 years of service.
You're going to need a space
seems
heater
like
now
you got his
to heat
money's
the
worth
space.
out of that one.
Jason, when do you get your camera dock?
It says it arrives tomorrow, and we'll see what that means. So
Need
yeah,
an
shoot me a list, and I'll
unboxing
play
review.
around with whatever you want.
Absolutely.
Demo.
No, I don't do unboxings. I'm sorry, but like, go to TikTok.
It's a box.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
here's
a
my
box.
unboxing
Every time
with a
I love it.
chainsaw. Like,
Okay, so I'm in sales. When people tell me, can you show me people are obsessed with packages. They're like, well, can I just see the box? I'm like,
this is like the ASMR of retail. Like, come on.
It's just, there's a photo of it on the box. Why? I don't see the benefit in looking.